Welcome to Framework. This is John, one of the hosts of Framework. With me, as always, the other host of Framework, Al. How are you today, Al?
I'm good. I'm here, and we have reached the end of the Albuquerque verse. Have we ever come up with that? Is it just the Breaking Bad verse? Is that the only?
I've heard the Albuquerque crime franchise, the Albuquerque crime verse. No, they never really came up with a name for it.
That's. I mean, it's hard to get more clunky than that. But I suppose Albuquerque is sort of a tough one for most meters to try and work in.
Yeah.
But yeah, Better Call Saul is over now.
Yep.
And as far as we know, there's no more spin-offs of Breaking Bad. So if that is true, does that make this like the most successful expanded universe in like fiction ever? Like it's got Breaking Bad, which is a lights out classic, a prequel, which entire prequel series that ran just as long as the original. Prequels usually blow, and it's fantastic. Some non-crazy people say it's better than the original, although I don't quite buy that. And the low point is El Camino, which is a sort of just disposable, but not at all shameful movie follow-up.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, when we get into television world franchises, would we consider the Frasier and Cheers duology? It's 2 11-season runs that were, obviously going to have highs and lows, but 11 seasons each, pretty successful all the way through. I don't know. Is that a fair comparison to the Albuquerque crime verse?
I don't think it's a fair comparison for two reasons. I think that one, I haven't seen much of Frasier, but I feel like it's pretty entirely disconnected from Cheers, more so than Breaking Bad and Saul are, and because they don't have the movie spin-off thing. That, like, really, that's where the extended universe element of it comes in. We're crossing media as well, and I said El Camino is the weakest link, but in terms of the track record of great TV shows doing a movie spinoff, it's probably one of the better ones. Like,
sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was, the website that we hang out on, we sometimes do a game, like a knockout game, where you get a certain topic, just whatever, Tarantino movies, and you list them all, and you have people vote them up and down, and it creates a list ranking, like crowdsources it, and it's a fun little game. And I had an idea for one of those for movie spinoffs of TV shows. And as I started listing them, I was like, the problem is nobody's going to care enough about any of these movies to have to even participate. Like, I mean, yeah, people might like Fire Walk with Me might be a good example.
Right.
But the Simpsons movie, the X-Files movies, Veronica Mars movie, like nobody's like, these are the highlights of the series. Never mind the Many Saints of Newark. But yeah, like Fire Walk with Me, maybe Serenity, Mystery Science Theater. I don't know, Oh, South Park. That was a good one.
You're right. There are some good ones, but it is unusual, and I don't think El Camino is great. It would be fine, unremarkable couple of episodes if it just appeared at the end of the Breaking Bad run. You wouldn't want that because it would screw up the tempo of the end of that series. But if you were somehow able to just place those mid-season, it would be sort of generic Breaking Bad episodes. Quality.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably somebody who's got that weird, OCD. Well, I don't know if it's somewhere on the spectrum thing that compels people to like take long form narratives that are presented, with flashbacks and whatnot, and just iron them out into pure chronological order. And if you did that, you would sort of begin and end with Better Call Saul, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Is there a Godfather 2 kind of way to kind of place this all into sort of a continuity? I think ultimately the answer is no, probably not. I mean, they work much better as their own separate things that intersect at the end.
Well, I think that's always like a wrong-headed impulse, and so I wouldn't really want to do that. But the only time that it's made any sort of sense to me is somebody proposing that the way to introduce someone new, wholly new to Star Wars in the present day, if you're intent on showing them the prequels and the originals, is to do Episode 4, Empire Strikes Back, then do all the prequels, and then circle back to Return of the Jedi last. And I think that actually would work out okay. I don't know if there's a Better Call Saul version of that.
I mean, it'd be okay, but there's still 3 bad movies and 3 good movies.
Yeah, but you get to
day.
start them out with a good one and end them on a good one, and you preserve the twist. The I'm your father twist.
Yeah.
And
I guess if you're a little undiscerning child, then it's fine. Yeah.
I think it'd be very hard. But I think Better Call Saul is structured weirdly, so you couldn't really do like the pre-Breaking Bad stuff and then Breaking Bad and then circle back to the post-Breaking Bad stuff. Like,
Well, the other thing about it is does Better Call Saul work in the same way if you're unfamiliar with the events of Breaking Bad? I mean, I would have to say it does not at all. Like it is very much a show that lives as a sequel to that show, even if it is technically a prequel. Like the events of that show and what we know about Saul is such an intrinsic part of experiencing this show. We know what happens to him, basically, or know what he becomes. Know how he presents in the Breaking Bad timeline, and that we are working towards that. And that knowledge is such a piece of this show. Like, I don't know, it's unusual that a show is able to do this. This is why prequels don't work, is this is so hard usually, and this show kind of nails it. This show kind of makes that a feature. It is written in such a way that we know that, and therefore that is not where the tension comes from. The tension comes from, well, these other characters around him whose fates we don't know, but also in just that there's a doomed Greek tragedy quality to it.
I think that is heightened and helped by the fact that that sort of element was kind of baked into the Breaking Bad DNA from the start. Even when we were not doing a prequel, where there was still a sense from the beginning of Breaking Bad that Walter White's sort of final destination was set, and that we were working towards that. And what Gilligan and his crew are so incredible at is making things surprising and unpredictable, even as they were following an inevitable march towards this particular doom. And we have a little more specificity about what Saul's bad outcome will be than Walt's, but we kind of knew all along that Walt he was going to reach the top and fall from there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's why we weren't too worried about Gus in season 4, because we knew the show wasn't ending. There was I say that was an excellent sequence, but that entire run of episodes
was a fantastic season. But it's the exact they recreated that trick with Lalo in this, where we know he can't succeed. That we know he can't do any real damage to these guys because they have to live on for the main series that comes after this, and yet
with their secrets unrevealed to the cartel. Yes,
even that. But they create these characters who seem so indomitable from scene to scene that you're really like kind of lost on. Well, how are they gonna outdo this guy, outwit this guy?
Oh,
man,
wow,
Tony Dalton.
What a creation. Yeah. Wow.
I know we did our last Better Call Saul episode right after he exited, so we probably should spend a lot of time marveling at Tony Dalton's performance. But man, what an incredible high level difficulty with that character all around, from the writing to the performance.
There was one more episode of Lalo that we did not speak about last time we talked about this show, because that was his
oh, right.
Yeah, that was the resolution of the cliffhanger. Yeah, and what a hell of an episode that was, by the way. That one back from the break, and man, what a surprise too, because I kind of figured that would rocket us into the last run of episodes, and it would all be resolving that issue. And nope, done in basically 2 episodes. One episode to finish that plot line, and then 1 episode of aftermath, and then straight into something else entirely. I don't think anyone saw that coming. Yeah.
Breaking Bad 2 did aftermath episodes better than any other show I can think of. That they were episodes that were entirely, if you're describing them, in one sentence TV guide description, it's sort of just like, this is the one where they deal with the aftermath of often Tuco, or of they kill the guy in the basement and I spend 2 episodes trying to get rid of the bodies, and those would seem to be like the dead spots on the calendar of the show, where okay, this is the most skippable, and yet they're really, really good at those episodes, making them pop. Box Cutter is entirely a Fallout episode from the season 3 finale, and yet it's one of the most memorable ones. helps that it's just got a really punchy title that places you exactly. Oh, it's that one, the one with the box cutter. but but yeah, I mean, Gilligan and his team, they've got a knack for certain things that they can that every would behoove any show on TV, and they're just like really really good at them.
I'm very curious where they go now. I mean, like Gilligan and Aaron Paul have both separately spoken, recently, in the press run of the Better Call Saul finale, about how okay, this is over now. Like we can't really do anything else with Albuquerque. I
Yes.
think we have to move on. We've been doing this 15 years or whatever. It's got to end, and I am curious where you go from here. Like what is the next project for Vince Gilligan? I mean, in between Saul and Better Breaking Bad, he did try to do a Jonestown thing that just sort of fell apart.
That's right.
Like, I'm curious. Like, you have mastered this one particular thing so completely here. Like, how do you keep that momentum into the next thing? And I mean, obviously, if they do it, it'll seem easy in retrospect. Well, he's a great creative engine. He's incredible
Right.
at these shows. But I think that, I mean, I guess that difficulty level is the same as trying to do Better Call Saul in the first place, though. How do you
I
follow up the great
It
thing?
seems like even Better Call Saul's difficulty was even greater because of the whole prequel aspect and how easily horrible and lame that could have been.
Yeah, outrageously difficult. I think they were correct in thinking they had an ace in the hole in Odenkirk and
Certainly.
Jonathan Banks. That's a pretty strong base to build on. So
And Esposito.
yeah, yeah, like the characters work. We know this.
Yeah, I guess although it wasn't immediately apparent that Gus could be that big of a part of the show. Like
Right.
it was like, okay, yeah, Urban Trout will be part of the Saul show because they were introduced sort of in tandem, and were clearly had a working relationship at the start. Gus was this shadowy figure that I think it may not even line up great. That if you go back and watch Breaking Bad, that Saul was sort of playing dumb about Gus when we know from the prequel that he's got a lot more knowledge than he's letting on. But whatever. I mean, they squared most of those circles really well, I think. And
Enough, certainly enough.
yeah, as far as what Gilligan does next, I mean, you're right. He'll make it look easy because also if you just like see any interviews with him or whatever, he's just a very humble, aw shucks guy that makes it seem like, oh, I don't know, I just was telling a story and it came together. It's like that. There's just this incredible level of artistic mastery in the presentation of this that he just does not, has no pretension about and belies. You would think watching him that they were just putting together a community theater production and just having a good time with their buds. But
Yeah, but you're right, and it's not just on the writing level, although that is obviously
yeah,
superlative. It's on the performance level, on the way these things
cinematography.
are shot. Yeah, like they better than any other show on TV. I would venture. I would say. I mean, even
Yeah.
these epic shows, even like I'm sure these Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones things that we're about to start watching are going to look great. But I almost feel like that's an entirely different deal than making
Yeah, the money will be on the screen
yeah,
there.
a New Mexico lawyer show look this good. Like,
Exactly.
it's outrageous. Yeah. That,
And like you were saying earlier too, though, they have to be done with Albuquerque now, just because the ages of people are getting to the point where they can't fudge any
that
more
is an
like
issue.
much more prequel content out of these people. And on top of which, there's not Breaking Bad never had a super sprawling cast. It was always a pretty tight core of important people here, and they mined all of like the main six people.
Mhm.
I mean, they even brought back Marie um, for this one. Yeah, but like Marie and Skylar are like the only ones that haven't gotten this like really I mean, I don't know. I guess you could do the Hank and Gomez prequel of their
Well,
Albuquerque Vice.
you go for it when they were teenagers. Yeah. I saw a tweet, a vile tweet somewhere about a proposed sequel series, which would be Kim breaks Jimmy out of prison and they hook up with Jesse, and it's back on. But now Walt Jr.'s a cop and he's chasing him. And I was like, is this a serious tweet? Is this a joke? And no, it's appeared to be serious. That's what some people want to see
Yeah,
now.
that,
And I'm just
oh,
like,
that
you missed
that
it.
has to that has to be
No.
parody.
This is
I refuse. For the sake of not
Does it
derailing
though?
the rest of this
I
episode,
think that
I
I,
choose to believe that's parody, and I
it is.
move on with my life. The simplest way to cut this knot is just do another sprawling, uh, you know, stunningly cinematic, cinematic crime thing in just a different city with a different cast of characters.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a relief to be like, it's over. They ended it. Like the thing is closed door. Like they got out pretty much unblemished, and that's remarkable and amazing.
Yeah, but I mean, they could he could do some sort of crime thing. I mean, he could involve cartels and everything, even in I don't know, in Houston or in Tampa or wherever. And you can even include Easter eggs, references to characters from this, but like not crossovers, but like on the level of there's a reference in Heat to like James Caan's character from Thief. That it's like, is that really a Michael Mann verse? Not really, but it's kind of a cute little Easter egg for the fans. Um,
Fargo type stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Or even Justified. I just spoke of two shows that were directly inspired by Breaking Bad. I think that
In
would
some
be.
some ways, yeah.
Yeah. That would be, I guess, the way to go. I mean, certainly, I don't think we're going to see anything more from these characters, though. Is the main point? Yeah.
No, okay, but here's another thing about Breaking Call Saul. You mentioned Justified too,
Yeah.
and we're getting a sequel series there,
Right.
and we're also, as we're recording this tonight, we're going to have the premiere of the Game of Thrones prequel series,
Certainly.
and there's certainly part of me that you have heard me bitch about on many occasions. This sort of uh, the bleeding dry of IP and how it's just this stranglehold of we can't let go of anything.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I think is poisoning the soul of our nation.
Very much.
But
Among other things, yes.
Better Call Saul makes me kind of optimistic about House of the Dragon and about Justified uh, 2 or whatever that one's called. It's got some sort of subtitle. But like, it
Hmm.
can be done. Like, I want, for the sake of my greater sociological thesis, for Better Call Saul to be awful and a waste of everybody's time. Uh, and yet, it is definitely not that.
Well, I mean, the exceptions to the rule are kind of the reason these things you can keep being like, okay, well, I guess I will get excited for Top Gun Maverick. People say it's great, like they exist and they can be done if people nail it to the wall. It's just harder, maybe. Or is it easier because they get the green light? They have the built-in audience for these things. It's a tough thing to kind of say. I mean, I would say that for every Better Call Saul or Top Gun Maverick, there's like 10 bad versions of this, though.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Like,
I think that having the audience built in doesn't save them more often than not.
well, it gets
Like,
it greenlit. It
right.
gets
No, but I'm
a
talking about
bunch of
artistically.
no, no, it
How
doesn't.
many of these things are trying to set up a new franchise, a new series of spin-offs that just die on the vine because
Hmm.
the thing might have even made money, but nobody liked it that much and nobody's enthusiastic about it. I mean, I guess Cameron's making all his avatars now, but how many
So curious.
more Star Wars movies were we supposed to have at this point? How many more like
Yeah.
lines of spin-offs if they could make them work? How many
So
more
many soft
Trons were
versions
we supposed
too.
to get?
Oh, right. But yeah, how many Adventures of Ravenwood were we supposed to have by now?
Right.
There's many attempted versions of this that may have withered at some point. Perhaps during production. It seems to be. Well, I mean, this is just IP extension. This is the path we've been heading in since the original Star Wars came out. In some ways, you know, uh, that's just what it is. It's kind of shocking that uh, something like Breaking Bad leads to it, uh, and even more shocking that it was good. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think one of the things that does help, and beyond just getting the green light, is that they turned this around so fast after Breaking Bad that they still had the crew and creative team together,
For
uh,
sure.
and were
Hmm.
able to just port it over in a way. I don't know that. I think they actually got a decent chunk of the original Game of Thrones crews, and the showrunner for the new one is Miguel Sapochnik, who directed several of the bigger, you know,
Yeah.
broader scope Game of Thrones episodes, but not on the level that Gilligan seems to have. I mean, he seems to have a very loyal crew there, and
Hmm.
they really just kept it seems like they kept everybody on the payroll continuously between shows to maintain this level of continuity. Like I said, it's
I
I
mean,
think they feel of a piece, just in terms of looking at them
oh,
and the sound.
completely. I mean, I imagine like we're talking like a Peter Jackson in New Zealand kind of thing, and like
Right.
the core crew of Albuquerque film professionals would have been maybe built for Breaking Bad in some ways, and is already in place without alternatives to move
Yeah,
into
well,
this show. Yeah,
I'm sure those people, like the writers and directors, could have got on other shows, and I'm sure
right.
some of them did, but they all like made time to come back, just like Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston, are going to make time for the cameos,
Hmm.
um, which I think that's the only thing. You said that like this jumping backwards a ways that it's so important to Better Call Saul how you know where he's heading for Breaking Bad. So I do think there was this incredible act of restraint of them holding off doing Walt and Jesse cameos for like 5 whole years, like kind of almost proving that they could do this whole series and bring it in for a landing without doing that. And then it's only in this last stretch that they really go for that. I think that's the only where not having seen Breaking Bad would make things most jarring or confusing is really in this final stretch.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it does kind of create a world like, well, it's a major part of Saul's arc about how bad things get during the Breaking Bad um, events. That's what he's going to prison for at the end. Stuff that all
Right.
happens off camera in Better Call Saul. Stuff that we are, I guess, familiar with, but he's done nothing kind of on that level. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
they
a
really don't
criminal, but
explicate
yeah,
exactly what he did with Walter White particularly well. If you were trying to watch Breaking or Better Call Saul as its own thing, I think it would
hmm
be you would have a vague idea that okay, he got into some real shit, although he was pretty deep in cartel stuff at points already. But shit got
yeah.
even more real. Uh, but I think it would be a little like, but okay, why is suddenly so much of this revolving around this off-screen character in the
hmm
final few episodes?
Yeah, and I mean, again, no one lives in a vacuum and is not aware of
Sure.
Breaking Bad if they're watching Better Call Saul. But it will be interesting. I don't know. Like, could you just watch this show without watching that show at all and not get lost? It would be a very different experience. Is the one thing. Like, you would not
Absolutely.
know who this guy is going to end up becoming. You would probably spend the first couple seasons wondering why it's called Better Call Saul. Yeah, there would be a lot of elements to it that would
Yeah.
seem out of place and odd if you were unaware of Breaking Bad, which I guess is sort of almost an impossible ask at this point. But I don't know.
Yeah, and my stance is generally you also don't need to pretend that people do live in a vacuum in order to reach for some sort of purity of this piece can stand entirely on its own. Like, well, it's a prequel, so no, it can't. It doesn't have it. It's sort of intrinsic to the thing that it doesn't have to, or probably shouldn't.
I'm actually surprised how many people I know that have I've heard say, "Well, I didn't really watch Breaking Bad, but I love Better Call Saul." I'm just like,
That's
wow, I didn't know
shocking.
you exist, but they are, and lawyers, a lot of them. This lawyers very much like this show, from my experience.
Yeah, it is weird how much better it is at portraying the legal profession than most TV shows that are based around lawyers lawyering.
Yeah,
You know,
this
suits
is what
or
I hear.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, it is really seems to know its shit in that regard.
it does. And there's an alchemy there of I think that this is what another thing that Vince Gilligan and his crew are incredible at is they could probably go to any boring field, profession, and render it in this lovingly crafted cinematic form that would make it seem interesting. Um, but most lawyer shows don't have the ability to make like especially the lower end legal stuff that this show really like luxuriated in a lot of its time. Uh,
Yeah, most legal shows are like they take place in a major metropolitan city. It is a
mhm.
case a week. It is, and it is
A
invariably
big
like,
case too.
yeah, it is like a murder case or a
Yeah.
some sort of massive fraud case or
Yes,
something.
ripped from the headlines.
Yeah, and this is
National
minutia.
news case.
This is like, zoning complaints and
Mm.
property tax evasion and
Yeah, and
and
haggling with the
minor.
city attorneys.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Sandpiper arc, a lot of the stuff that even in retrospect I probably couldn't explain. Like
yeah.
having to remember back, like, oh, how did that work again? And it didn't matter at the time. I mean, I had a grasp on it
Hmm.
more than I understood. Really, probably I understood what was going on within the context of the show. They did a great job of explaining all that stuff as much as it needed to be explained. And
Well, and by the finale of this series, they're articulating that one of Saul's greatest sins is sabotaging his brother's malpractice insurance. Like that is
yeah,
something that you know. I'm not
what a
sure
good
how.
one.
Yeah, but I think it would rightfully intimidate a lot of uh, you know less talented writers to try and figure out how to dramatize that
Mm.
effectively.
Oh yeah. So should we talk about the actual finale here? I mean, I guess we're talking about the entire last run of 6 episodes here.
Yeah,
All the
we've hardly
Breaking Bad
mentioned them at
Walter
all,
stuff.
but
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, they're really impressive. They're really strong. They're
yeah.
quite a journey. Like, and it really seems like, yeah, like I can't believe it was only like what 4 weeks ago we were watching uh, the Parks and Rec guy in the playing a security guard. That whole arc, that was
Oh
so
yeah.
shocking when that happened. Like, oh, we're in black and white Omaha, and it's just this for a whole episode. It's just this a stealing a coat. Uh, this is the entire story we're doing, and reasonably, you could assume that was the end of the Omaha narrative. Like that was a solid end to him in Omaha. Just kind of like, I got a taste of the old life, but I can't have that anymore, and that's it. And that could have been the end of the story. And then the rest could have just been backstory and Kim stuff and what really went down then. And they no, not the case. I believe last time we talked, my theory on how this was going to end was simply that was his finale is purgatory. We've already seen what happens to Jimmy, and it's basically nothing. Like he just has sort of a lonely life. He made it away. He escaped, but at what cost? He's got nothing left, and that felt like a resolution that made sense to me. But I think the show was smarter than that, and they were just like, I mean, this guy's not just going to stop. Like
Well,
the guy you've
okay.
been watching is not giving up here. He's not just going to be quiet forever.
Let's just talk about the final resolution for the character then, because
Yeah.
that's obviously a big part of any of these things. I mean, this is an anti-hero show,
Hmm.
and I like that we got an anti-hero show finally that just put the guy in jail at the end. Like I feel like so many since The Sopranos, even like there's been an attempt to like outsmart the like quote unquote obvious resolution to this, that like, well, either they go to jail or they die, and that goes back to the Hayes Code and all kinds of things that
Hmm.
people are still sort of reacting,
And
even if they're
Sopranos
reacting.
thing, yeah,
Yeah,
that you just talked about it, like the finale of Sopranos is almost like an entire workaround on that. Like,
right.
how do we have our cake and eat it too? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant, and this sort of does that as well. I mean, there's a having your cake and eat it too element coming up that I will want to talk about separately, but I do like that. It was like, no, okay. It, weirdly, we've done so many of these shows, and all of them have been like, well, we didn't want to just put him in jail because we want to do something more interesting. And they're like, oh, no one has done this yet. Dexter didn't go to jail,
Vic
and
Mackey didn't go to jail.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to just do a list of spoilers, I guess, but
You're right. Yeah. Shit. Sorry.
it's always a brilliant. The resolution of the shield is absolutely brilliant,
Hmm.
and there is a punishment angle to that. Maybe that's actually the closest spiritual cousin to Better Call Saul. Because, all right, so, I mean, to lay it out there, what happens to Saul in the finale is he gets busted very quickly by the Omaha police, which is kind of great, too. That,
Hmm.
great opening sequence of him on the run that just sort of quickly unravels into him, uh, you know, in a trash can surrounded by police. But he manages to cut an incredible deal to sort of knock down his sentence from life plus 180 years to 7.5 years in Bertie Madoff's resort prison with a in-house golf pro, um, or whatever the hell it was. And then he squanders all of that. He reneges on the deal and takes basically the life sentence just in order to get himself a chance to sort of apologize to Kim, even indirectly, but
Yeah.
in person.
Hmm.
And so he goes off to jail for 80 years or whatever. But we do get the sense too that like he's kind of a celebrity in jail.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
totally. Hmm.
People know who he is. You know, he's Walter White was a big news story, obviously, and his lawyer and is a known figure to the underworld there, at least in the Rocky Mountain Alcatraz. Uh, so, is there a sense? Are we supposed to have taken away that yes, he went to jail, but he's actually less miserable in jail than he was at Cinnabon?
I mean, I don't think it's worse than Cinnabon. I think
Yeah.
the image of him making bread there in the same fashion that he did at the Cinnabon, I think if anything that kind of suggests that it's just sort of a pyrrhic defeat, if you will. It's
Mhm.
it's basically the same. Like it's the same sort of purgatory that he's found himself in, but at least now his soul is unburdened. He has reconnected with Kim, even if it is in this sort of impossible, uh, unrequited way. He's done what she was able to do, and he's at peace. I think that's what we're meant to take from it, which is a nice way for his story to end.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you want because you don't really want him to get away with it. I mean, I think if anything, those last 3 episodes when he's back to conning and stealing and ruining people's lives, uh, kind of proves without a doubt that he can't handle it. Like he is unable to stop this. It is a compulsion, and something needs to be done. As much as we like him, and I think that they've threaded the knot quite well on an appropriate finale for Saul,
Yeah, I guess
because he was never Walter
the
White.
only thing in Omaha, you could still say that he was getting away with it. You know, like
Well, he
yeah,
could
he's
say he
living
was
as a
getting away
schnook.
with it.
Yeah,
I think
he did
that was
articulate that.
his. That's all he was getting out of it, though. The
Yeah,
knowledge that he was getting away with it. There was nothing
exactly.
else for him there. He didn't seem to have any community.
No,
Like nothing.
well, other than Jerry from Parks and Rec, I guess that
But
you
even
know
that was a put on. Like there
yeah,
are no real relationships in his life
right.
anymore.
It's
Yeah.
amazing how quickly he's able to manufacture those relationships with Carol Burnett or anybody who he considers a mark. He
Yeah.
can get them to accept him. So he could have you know
Well,
found
that
real
was his
community there pretty
superpower.
easily. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I
Uh,
guess that is interesting. Like, yeah, it's almost a bit of a sort of a monkish kind of self-imposed punishment in that sense because he's capable of turning
mhm.
on the charm. Obviously, that's like his number one thing,
But he has
and he
sort of
did.
contempt for the marks, I guess, that maybe like I don't know if you consider them his true community. Like I think what the community he's
For sure,
missing
they're
is
not. Yeah.
is the sharks and the players, that he
Right.
sort of I guess
Right.
probably what drew him to the law generally is that he saw lawyers as people who without breaking the law were still like the ones who were playing the angles and like working the system in a way that he could sort of respect even as someone who tried to work it from the other side of the fence.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is sort of that. Yeah, that the only person he can really trust is other thieves kind of deal.
Hmm.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, I mean, then that just reinforces that maybe he's at home now.
Yeah,
Maybe
right.
he's found his people. Yeah. Yeah, he is a minor celebrity or something in prison. Yeah, I don't know. I also don't need it to be a total happy ending for him. It probably shouldn't be. Like we say,
Yeah.
it's. I do find it. This was the thing that really threw me, and I'm so used to the usual structure of these things that I figured that his entire giving up of himself had to be in some way related to exonerating Kim. That it had to be a
Hmm.
self-sacrificial act for somebody else, but it's not. Like what he does
No.
doesn't affect her at all, and she wouldn't want that either. Like she made the decision to take responsibility for what she did, and to
Yeah.
exonerate her at all would be robbing her of that, and that's not what she
Right.
wants. and he knows that's not what she wants. But I'm just so used to that that's how these stories would be told that I was kind of like, wait a minute, what? How that doesn't help Kim at all? What, this doesn't make sense in the moment. And then I had to think about it and be like, no, it's about his soul. It's about his soul, and it's about, wanting her to see him as she used to see him, and not as Saul Goodman, but as Jimmy McGill.
I suppose. The distinction between, oh, he's Saul here and he's Jimmy here, and there's some fun
I mean,
visual
it's sort of
stuff they
Walton
play around
Heisenberg
with.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, but the idea that they're actually like, oh, there's two different people here, I think is overblown. It's just it's part
That's
of being
true.
a shithead. You don't get to pretend that there's a pure version of you, that you shuffle
That was the point
between.
of Heisenberg.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was very much like, no, it's just Walt. There's no two people there. Yeah.
So
Okay, that's a fair point.
if I this is something I don't know. Like, I have some misgivings about this finale actually, and
Yeah, I also don't want to say this is a perfect, excellent all timer. I think it's a good one, but I had
I
some
suspect though.
reservations.
So they're kind of the same reservations I had about the Breaking Bad finale, which those
Oh,
over time have not. I mean, they haven't ruined Breaking Bad for me by any means, but those reservations have not gone away. They've, if anything, calcified a little bit to like, yeah, like the one misstep there is I think they let him get away with too much in the end, and that
he
ultimately,
kind of
like,
gets his power moment. Yeah, he gets
yes,
to
he
be
gets
the
to
man once
die.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, he dies, so that's his punishment, I guess. But he also gets to die entirely on his own terms, and well, yes, while flexing his agency. And here, Jimmy also, goes down in the end, but the manner in which he goes down is still like he gets to set all the terms for how he is put
Mm-hmm.
away for life. That he's got. I mean, the microcosm is just that scene where he's negotiating his plea with the prosecutors, and in the course of a commercial break, we go from they've got him dead to rights on 180 years plus life and 27 RICO predicates to he's entirely controlling the negotiations. It's not terribly realistic, I don't think. I mean, and then even when he decides to throw the deal away, it's all he's running roughshod over the prosecution and the judge and his own co-counsel, and he gets to do it all his way and go down on his own terms to a place that, like I said, he might prefer to Omaha anyway.
Fair
And that
enough.
strikes the same sort of like
Mm-hmm.
kind of bum cord on me. Like, this is a punishment, but not really. It seems like to me.
I mean, I do think there is something to be said that much with Walter White, probably much more so with Jimmy McGill, that the audience is not wrong for enjoying these characters and living
Mm-hmm.
vicariously through them. I think there was a tendency, especially in the aftermath of Breaking Bad, to make sure everyone knew that you understood Walter White was the bad guy. Like that, like, oh, well, clearly, he is hateful, and I hope something happens to him. And I think this is I think to some extent something people feel a need to make sure that they, because there is, certainly a cohort of the fandom that does not feel that way at all and is purely rooting for Tony or purely rooting for Walt. And I mean, but on the other hand, I think that we are kind of, I mean, yeah, we are kind of rooting for these people. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, the only one that really
I mean,
threaded this needle
certainly
perfectly
against
was
like
the
Lalo.
right. Yeah, exactly. Well, Jimmy more so than the others too.
Yeah.
I think there is an appeal to
Well,
that,
okay,
but
but
he is also a con artist, which are some of the most hateful people in the universe.
yeah. So okay, there's a couple of things there. One of them is we kind of talked about last time, though. I think you and I differ, and maybe I'm just outside of the crowd on this one generally, but I really, you're saying you like Jimmy better than most of these guys, your Vic Mackeys or your Tony Sopranos or whoever. I really hate Jimmy. I really hated Jimmy and Kim in this last season because of the Howard stuff that I still think is just
Hmm.
insane psychopath stuff, like on a
It
level
is, yes.
that Walter White did not touch. Even
He
Walter White
didn't
was
deserve it.
murdering 11 people in 2 minutes. There was a sense of necessity there. You understand why he thought
Hmm.
that was a necessary thing, and he wasn't doing it just for kicks. Um, Part of what made him a hateful character at that juncture, though, was that he was getting a kick out of it. But anyway, the just purely for kicksness of it was so odious and hateful to me that I was like, I cannot get back on these people's sides whatsoever. I'm shocked how much back on Kim's side I was able to get. And, maybe tell me if I'm being hypocritical here. Like, am I holding Jimmy and Kim to two different standards? Because I forgave her to a greater extent because she did, entirely of her own accord, sort of make amends. That it wasn't, she was not chased down by the police.
Mm-hmm.
She undertook all of her exile, purgatorial exile in Florida instead of Omaha, but she did that to herself. And then she confessed without any sort of gun to her head whatsoever.
Well, it's such a stark contrast from not just every other character in the Breaking Bad universe. Nobody just went to the cops and said what was happening. That doesn't happen in these shows. Certainly never happened in The Sopranos. Certainly never happened in
Sure.
any of the other. I mean, The Shield. None of these things, the anti-hero shows. No one owned up to it before Kim. Really, never once. So it is striking when that happens, and I think that goes a long way towards her being redeemable and just taking on the consequences, come what may, of all of it.
I do think that never happens in the other shows. Maybe in large part, I think that a unprompted full confession seems much less dramatic than a hail of bullets.
Yeah.
So, but this show operates in a different field. There were some hails of bullets throughout this series, but it's not about that in the way that a lot of the other ones are. But I mean, I guess what I was saying is, like, by doing that all of her own accord, she does also get to sort of set the terms for her own, salvation or whatever, redemption. Except, I don't know, I guess it is different because she doesn't set the terms entirely. She puts it in the hands of the DA and Howard's widow.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, I guess. That
mm-hmm.
And that Jimmy takes control of it after, he does have to get chased down in a dumpster.
Right.
So I guess the distinction there being, if I'm supposed to buy his confession and taking on the life sentence as saving his soul, I don't know if I buy that. Because Kim is a counterexample there of how I think her soul kind of was saved by doing it when she didn't have to. But when he was already going down and he just sort of waffled on how exactly he wanted to fall, but ultimately did it in a way where he was on paper taking the harsher punishment, but also, again, getting to set all the terms himself. I don't know. It doesn't seem like as much of a self-abnegation as it does in her case, even though, 80 years is nothing to scoff at.
I mean, also, I think, I don't know, we're using the term soul here, which, I don't know, I don't feel that that's quite the right one, because this is not, I don't know, this is not a show concerned with the afterlife in the way, like, others might be. There's no, that doesn't appear to be a thing here, at least narratively. And so what it really is maybe an unburdening, an owning up. I'm not sure what it is exactly. I think, like, it's not quite the soul that it's concerned about.
Well, but it's just the idea of being a capital G good person, whatever that means.
I mean, that certainly means something different to Jimmy than to other people, though.
Right.
Like, that's the thing. Like I don't know. Was Chuck a good person? I don't think so. I think he was a profound asshole. Like, I really disliked that character all the way. Like, at no point was I sympathetic to him, and he never broke the law. Like, he never did anything quote unquote wrong.
Yeah, and Jimmy did a ton wrong. Jimmy's just more likable. But likable and good are not the same thing. I think
the show's about that. Something. Yeah, I mean, a con artist has to be likable. Yeah.
I mean, in Dungeons and Dragons terms, I think Chuck was lawful good or lawful neutral at most. But that doesn't mean he was fun to hang out with.
Yeah.
Howard never did anything wrong, I don't think, really. I mean,
well, Howard straight up was likable, I thought. Howard was explicitly undeserving of any punishment. I mean, he's just sort of wealthy, I guess. Like, that was about it. Aloof.
Yeah.
A
Even
repository
not even
for
really. Slightly
resentment.
aloof.
Like, yeah,
He was the boss, So
yeah.
there's always reasons to dislike the boss, I guess. But well, I guess the question for me is Jimmy a good person? Absolutely not.
No.
Terrible person all around.
Mhm.
He's ruined so many lives.
Con artists are really horrible. Like it's one of the unfortunate things in Hollywood cinema history of movies that it's so easy to make an interesting con artist movie when they're just
Right.
some of the shittiest people that exist. Like they are not deserving of any sympathy ever. It's one of the worst things you can be.
And it's been said we were living in the era of the con artist, that
Yeah.
currently America is really in sway of some pretty crappy, not even like con artists on the level of Slip and Jimmy McGill. But what I was getting back to was like, okay, no, Jimmy's not a good person. Is Kim a good person? And I feel like most people would say yes to that. And I would say absolutely not. Like she is sort of, taking her medicine, I guess, at the end, or might still be in the process of doing that or whatever. And she's cleared the slate a little bit, where maybe she could be a good person going forward. But I don't know, man. Like again, the level of pure petty sadism with
Yeah.
which she was acting, like, I don't think you get to do that and then go to confession and be like, oh, but you're all right. Like, I think, like, oh, I mean, maybe you don't go to jail. You can work in a spiritual company or whatever, but I still think you're an asshole. Like,
Hmm. And I think she thinks she's an asshole quite clearly.
yeah,
Like it haunts her forever. I mean, that's definitely the takeaway I got.
yeah.
But
Well, I guess that's why I'm pushing back on the unburdening thing. I'm like, do these people deserve to be unburdened, even if they're like,
no, they shouldn't be. I mean, and that's another thing. I don't actually think. I don't know. The Chuck thing makes it a little more complicated. Does Jimmy actually feel bad about any of this? And I think the Chuck thing would say yes. It's one of the best moments of the whole episode, that the finale. And his lawyer says, oh, "What are you talking about? It wasn't even a crime." Yes, it was. That's so
yeah.
good. But
It is, God, it's such a good line, but also like the lawyer in me is like, yeah, he said that he got his malpractice insurance invoked via fraud. The crime is fraud. No, there was a fraud there when he drove Trump to suicide. There was a crime, but I don't care about that. But anyway,
nah, fuck Chuck. But
like, you don't need to. I don't need to fret over the nitpick of, what do you mean that's not a crime? Of course it's a crime. He just said what it was. I'm like, no, it's such an important capper for that relationship.
yeah, yes, that was very well handled. Although I will say that the flashback scene with Chuck in the finale, it just sort of reminded me what an asshole I thought Chuck was.
Mm-hmm.
I was still just like, the hell with that guy. I don't care.
Conversely, I loved the flashback with Walt in the finale because it reminded
Wonderful.
me what an asshole that guy was.
Yeah, he's an entertaining asshole. Like, that was a very good scene. That was that was certainly the best Walter White scene since Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
Put it
I
that
mean,
way.
but I do love that, knowing as they did that this was going to be the final appearance of the Keystone character in this universe, and like, they were so resistant to like making him look good in any way there, that he's walking around in a t-shirt and underwear and just being petty and self-centered, and not, doesn't get any great lines really. Even, I mean, the thing
I'm
about how
sure he
you've always
does.
been like this is kind of a good line, but I don't know. It's not a reminder of his power or greatness in any way. It's a reminder of his pettiness and self, self-centeredness.
I did enjoy it. So what you're actually talking about here is regret, right?
Yeah.
All that stuff is great.
Lecturing. And that, his thing that he wants to go back and fix is not repair the relationship with his family. It's
right.
to get revenge on his business partners.
Is there a good person in Better Call Saul? A single real good person? I mean, I think Howard Hamlin is probably the closest you get.
Howard Hamlin, I think in the end, Nacho Varga,
yeah,
because he is one of the guys, even when he's doing bad things, always had that element of a gun to his head. He did, he involved himself in this world, which is the original sin for all these people, that, Jesse Pinkman too. But for Jesse and him, most of their most heinous acts are done when they're being compelled by outside murderous forces to act in the more extreme ways.
Interesting. Yeah. Within the context of this world, though, I think Nacho is probably the best dude that you come across. I mean,
Mike's not so bad.
Yeah, Mike, you see every step. That's a nice thing about this show that kind of happened quietly. You really do see every step he takes, like to get to where he was in Breaking Bad, which is still, not still a pretty sympathetic character, but at the same time, definitely a murderer, definitely a criminal, and you see the slow path, and oh god, he had a great flashback too. His only scene in the finale.
Yeah,
that sequence where he talks about his regret and what he would change, and he has the right answer.
Yeah, he has the great contrast there. Where his initial reaction is a date in the 2000s, which is clearly related to his son who died, and then he takes it back even further. Says, no, actually, it's not just, oh, I want to intervene and stop my son from dying or stop my son from becoming corrupt. It's, I need to go back even farther and stop myself. He's taking it upon himself. In a way, which I guess is the idea is that's what Jimmy's doing at the end. But in a way that still strikes me as kind of self-serving.
Well, that's always been Mike's thing. Is that he's a very haunted individual. Like the cost of what Mike has become weighs heavily on his soul and on his face. Like, I mean, that's why he was such a well-cast actor. It was using everything about Jonathan Banks to give a career-defining performance, and I mean, how great is it that character came out of this even more interesting, even more deep and resounding as a figure within this universe. Like they nailed Mike here too, and I think they kind of did it quietly in the background, and it was great. Same with Gus, really.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Gus may not have had a better. He had two excellent scenes in his last episode. The one with Lalo and the one in the bar, and they're as good as there's ever been a Gus scene, I would say.
Yeah, that's, it's just a weird character where Giancarlo Esposito is such a great actor, and yet so much of the time it seems like he's just doing nothing with that character, but that's just in the design. And that's how you do it correctly in that case. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible that they did 6 years of prequel and didn't really mess up any of the characters. Like, prequels are such a risk because you always make things worse rather than better by trying to go back to a time when you knew initially this is not where the interesting story is. That's where we're not going to start there. But then the dollar signs come in and the green light's already there. You're like, well, yeah, we could find something there. And I mean, goddamn, did they ever find something here?
I think if you got, I think the thrill of doing a show, a crooked lawyer show with Bob Odenkirk, I understand why they thought they could pull that off, and they did. And man, it was great to see him get a career role too, huh? Like to really, really get to hone this guy and really show what he's able of doing. This is a guy whose career has had so many almosts, like he was almost the
Michael
Steve
Scott.
Carell. That's just like, and you get why they thought that would work and why it didn't, just from everything about his persona. It's that, and then he landed here with the perfect role for his talents. I'm so thrilled that happened. It's great, and
it's perfect in that he got to play sort of the more comedic version of it. It's the more Mr. Show version of the sleazy lawyer for a couple of years, and sort of ease his way into the more dramatic version of it, and morph that from a Mr. Show character into a leading man
flawlessly. It couldn't have been planned better. It's crazy that it worked that way. And now he's he's just a character actor that we're going to see for the rest of his life. Like he's in Spielberg movies now. Like
he was an action hero. Wasn't he?
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
John Wick ripoff.
That's right, and he was really good in it. That's crazy. It's not a great film, but he's excellent in it.
Yeah,
and and I wonder if it might have contributed to his health. That what he's doing in that is pretty incredible physical stuff. But man, I just want to see him keep doing stuff, forever. He's got a new show. They told me about it during the finale.
Yes, that's true. Well, and as a last note, the other thing this did was introduce us to Ray Seahorn, which
Oh
pretty
yeah.
incredible that they kept her a secret for like 40 years, basically. I mean, I had
Hmm.
never heard of her. Was I'm pulling up her IMDb. I guess she was on the Whitney sitcom and Burn Notice for several years.
Hmm. No,
Have you
I
ever
never
seen
heard of
the? There's a Saturday Night Live sketch that is a game show that is just called "What is Burn Notice?" and it's people like looking at a poster or watching a teaser of just like people in sunglasses in Miami and trying to figure out, but what is this show? Like, is he a lawyer?
it. I've never seen a minute of Burn Notice.
Exactly. I couldn't. Is he a private detective?
That sounds fine. I think he was a spy. I think, and now he wasn't, and that's the premise. I
Was
know Bruce Campbell's in it.
was Bruce Campbell in it? That's okay.
Yeah,
So was it a comedy?
he's not the Burn Notice
We're
though.
just
He's a
acting
supporting.
out the sketch now.
Like, okay,
We're not reading a transcript, I swear. But anyway, Ray Seahorn, incredible. You
great.
know,
Hmm.
she's going to get an Emmy for this, right? Has to.
She better. I mean,
Or
they
it's going to go to
finally
something.
nominated her. Yeah.
It's weird that she doesn't have 4 already from this.
Hmm.
But
I mean, one thing about the Albuquerque crime universe, as we're calling it, is it every single person in its best work and defining work? I mean, I think it is, right? Like, I can't look at any of these actors without being, it's Hank. Oh,
right.
like they're going to be able to
I
work
mean,
forever because of these roles.
Giancarlo Esposito's been in like Spike Lee movies.
Yeah, but the guy playing video games and Do the Right Thing is not,
Right.
that's another movie. That's Gremlins, I think, where he's playing video games. The point is, nothing quite looms as large as Gus Fring, and I think all the villain roles he's getting now, while he's good in The Boys and The Mandalorian, he's very much just like, we got Gus Fring in here.
Was he
like
in The Maze Runner?
in the shadow of that performance? It sounds right.
He was in one of those, young adult
yeah.
post-apocalyptic thingamajigs. But yeah,
there's persistent rumors that he's going to be the new Professor X, but I think he's probably too
that's
old.
right.
I think that's what they're going to.
I don't know. I mean,
He's,
Professor X is old.
He's almost 70.
Yeah, what was Patrick Stewart like 32 when he got the gig? Who knows?
He's like 50. He was
Oh,
like
really?
50
Wow.
old. Yeah.
God, it's so hard to tell with him.
Yeah, he always looked old.
Well, I'm sure we'll see Ray Seahorn in something else. I mean, I hope she doesn't get totally wasted, but she's 50 years old now too. So that's the only downside.
Oh my! Wow. Wow.
Starting another long-running series here is going to be more difficult.
That's interesting. I always thought that they were aging Odenkirk way down to meet her. I guess not as much as I thought. Speaking of that, the aging down of Odenkirk was really good.
Really effective.
Like they handled that so well. Like,
the best compliment we can give that is how little we've discussed it in these episodes. Like the fact that it doesn't jump out as like effortful. Yeah.
All right, we're faffing around here. Is there any final thoughts on Better Call Saul? Where does this fall in the continuum of great finales? I don't think it's an all-timer. I think it's a very good one, but I think it basically did what it needed to do pretty well.
I think it's definitely in the success column. And
for sure.
I suspect it might grow on me more positively than Breaking Bad grew negatively on me over time. So I don't know, it's gonna be hard to rate it over some of the bigger, more explosive finales. I think overall, but that is by design and appropriate for this show. That it was the less explosive version of the anti-hero show.
I mean, isn't that kind of the it would be almost off if it wasn't that, it's right. I mean, in the same way that, how does this show compare to the real heavy hitters, just because it's a more mellow show by design? I mean, I think that's true of the series as a whole and the finale. So yeah, true.
Yeah.
It'll
again, the type of thing that would
to match the Shield, the gold standard of finales.
Mm-hmm. And again, just incredible awareness and restraint on Gilligan and Peter Gould and everybody's part to resist the lure of trying to outdo the Shield and to embrace the things that make this a harder sell, at a slower pace and more legal minutia, and really, just a more difficult lead character, more difficult supporting characters, like like Chuck.
I mean, that is ultimately the stuff that makes this show so special too. Like the difficulties, the ways that they made this a little less obviously appealing, and then nailed those things. Like it's it's deeply impressive, and this is an all timer show. This is one of the great shows, I would have to say at this point, and it really feels like the kind of television that we had a lot of 10 years ago and less now.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is sort of the last bastion of the peak TV era of antiheroes, and also just things getting done on this level. I'm kind of curious what's going to be able to come out and
Yeah,
fill
it is.
the void.
It is kind of reaching back to a different era, but also feels like it has progressed into this era. Like they finally, with Kim, the great triumph there is they created a love interest for an anti-hero that the audience didn't hate.
Yeah, nailed it.
And that is something that eluded 50 of these shows in a row for a long time, and not because they weren't trying. That the obvious sort of surface level explanation for that is how they made her more of an accomplice than a wet blanket or a scold, and she is like neck deep in it with him. But I don't think it's actually just as simple as that, because I think there are cases where they've tried that with a Sons of Anarchy or whatever, or Dexter probably had some murderer girlfriends, and
he had like 3.
Yeah, and it turns out the audience kind of hates them too, because they're horning in on the Special Boys racket or whatever, or just because there's a lot of people who hate women generally.
Big part of it,
and they don't, and the people who don't like women for nagging them also don't really love powerful women who are co-equal, actors with the bad boys. But with Kim, they seem to have just slalomed right through all of those potential hurdles to the point that she's pretty universally beloved. I'm one of her biggest detractors, and I think she's pretty great.
Also, like it strikes me as one of the only anti-hero shows that is legitimately kind of a love story. I mean, it's clearly other things as well, but the romance aspect of this totally worked. They were working on it, they developed it, and they found 2 actors that had good chemistry together, and it landed. And they seemed like they were right together, and it is tragic that they blew it in a way. So that's
true.
I mean, I guess those same people we were just talking about probably don't care about that thing, but it is the only one that really did that.
Yeah, but I definitely don't mourn for the loss of Walter White and Skylar White's marriage. Like, they were just wrong from the start.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's clearly the thing that would be best for them not to be together. Yeah.
This has more of a longing romantic thing of there's a version of this where this could have worked out, that they fucked it up.
Yeah, but we love each other. Yeah, but so what? It's great. It's great. So all right. Well, I guess that does it on Better Call Saul.
I got to go start my wife on a Breaking Bad rewatch.
Yeah, it might happen. All right. Thanks for talking about it. See you next time.